So any questions? I'll grade your PA4s over the weekend. Hopefully finish them by Monday, and we'll probably talk about them on Tuesday. Okay, and I'll make some general comments and show you some code and things like that. I had about 80% of the students turn in to get by 8 o'clock this morning. So if you're in the 20% that did not get it turned in, I sent you an email on Canvas, okay, shortly after 8 o'clock. So if you did not get an email from me on Canvas, you should be good to go. If you got an email saying I don't have access to your repository and you don't know how to fix it, talk to me like right after class, right here. I've got a few minutes until 2:15 starts after this class, so come and catch me today because you want to get it turned in before 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So any questions before we move away from PA4?
Have you looked at any of the assignments yet?
No.
Okay.
Should I look at yours first?
Sure. I was just gonna ask, like, what types of things have you ran into that were a big problem?
Yeah, I haven't run any of the code yet.
Cool.
No.
Sounds like
But I will.
None of it runs, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So are you going to be testing it by typing in it or sending in sample files to it?
I'll probably send in sample files just so I can use consistent. But it should make no difference to your code.
How big of sample files?
Oh, 20, 30 terabytes. No. Like the sample file from the assignment.
Blow up.
Like the one on the assignment, so 10 or 15 lines with repetitions and some unique phrases and things like that.
Oh, you're not using War and Peace?
I'll also do a War and Peace test.
I know.
Yeah.
You guys, I have
So
to
like
have
if it
like
works perfectly on the smaller stuff, but then like it has a little bit of weird behavior on the War and Peace, is that okay for the most part?
Yeah, for the most part.
It's just like my count array, like puts a bunch of random numbers in the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
When I do War and Peace, but like if I do any like other sort of thing, anything smaller, it's perfectly fine and goes through perfect.
Okay. So,
I don't know why.
so War and Peace blow up is -5 points.
Well, it doesn't blow up.
And if it works most of the way, you get some of those 5 points back. So yeah.
I pushed like everything in my repository, so might be some files in there, but I don't think that
That's okay. Because you have a make file, right?
Yeah.
So that tells me what gets compiled to make the executable. So I don't mind if there's extra stuff. That's fine. All right. Other questions? All right. So on to PA5.
Group project? Group coders?
All right, so yeah, PA5 is a group project. That's the first thing. You can work in groups of up to 4 people, and you want to do this on a laptop that's running Linux or Windows with Cygwin installed, preferably, possibly Mac, but I'm not confident that Mac will work.
Do we need one laptop per person?
Per group,
Whoa.
right? Because it's a group project.
Do we take turns coding?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, so first thing, right, in deciding who's going to be in your group and how many people are going to be in your group, we want to make sure that this group makes sense in terms of breaking up the work, okay? I want to avoid the situation where, 2 people are writing the code and one of your friends comes up and says, hey, can I join your group? And you're like, yeah, sure. And they, write the comment block in the beginning or something, or test it or something, right?
I got my comment block.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
I might not have noticed. Did you put your name in at least?
No.
Oh.
No, like put someone else's name.
Yeah, don't put someone else's name. That's the worst.
Oh no.
It's okay. Yeah, so you want to think about how you're going to split PA5 up among different people in your group. So how are you going to break the work down? Who's going to do what? And that's going to be part of your presentation. Okay, so PA5 you're probably going to present to the class as a group, and you want to talk about how you divided the work up. So make sure that it makes sense to have whoever's in your group be in the group. Now, how you're going to actually share the workload is totally up to you. Some people may want to use Git. That's sort of the next level of Git, is using it for collaboration with other people, and that gets you into things like branching, which you'll be doing at WSU if you go to WSU from here. But we don't need to get into branching for what you're doing, in this course or 222, 23. But you can use Git, or you can, each work on your own system and just email code back and forth or whatever, right? It's up to you. Or get together physically and work on one machine. But you want to make sure somebody in your group has either a Linux laptop or Cygwin running on Windows, or a VirtualBox or something where you can do this. If you don't know what an X server is, don't worry about what I'm about to say. But if you know what an X server is and you have an X server running on your system, you can do your development on the Linux server. Okay, you just have to set up your display to push back to your X server on your native machine. All right, so let's and it's due 2 weeks from today. Okay, morning of the 29th, 8 a.m. That's the day after Thanksgiving. So if you're going shopping, you need to turn it in first, and submit it through a Git repo. Name the repo PA5. Make sure I have access to it. One submission per group only, please, and make sure there's a comment block with everybody's name in it. Okay, so that when I look at the code, I know this person, that person, this person get credit for it, and use the full names. Don't just use initials, or I don't know this person's last name or something. Right? Find it out. Make sure the names are in there. So let's look at the actual assignment. And this assignment has a lot of wiggle room that's sort of left to your own creativity. The basic setup is you're going to make a travel reservation system. Okay, so it's going to be a GUI, a graphical program, implemented as a shell script in Bash. So you run this script, and it should pop up a dialog which asks for the name of the person who's traveling, and then show a list of cities, and the person picks where they want to leave from. Shows a list of cities, they pick where they want to travel to, show them a calendar, ask when they want to leave, ask when they want to return, and ask how many bags they want to check. Okay, so basic interaction with the user. And then display a summary of that information. You can display that just on the terminal if you want, or you can do it graphically. And then the last part is you're going to have a file in your directory named res.txt. That's a reservation file. And you want to see if this person already has a reservation in this file. And if they do, get rid of that old reservation. And then you want to add this new reservation to that reservation file. So a traveler can be in that file at most once, and if they're already in there, you're basically replacing the reservation with a new one. And the reservation goes in as a single line, which looks like this. So it's a comma-separated collection of fields: name, number of bags, departure date and city, arrival date and city. And there's a lot that's not specified here, and you get to fill it in how you like. Okay, so whatever you want to tell them about the reservation system, about your airline, about your travel service, whatever, totally up to you. If you're going to put restrictions on their name, if you're going to make sure that they put in a first name and a last name, or if you'll accept just a first name or a last name, right? Totally up to you. If you do this, you get full credit, all right? But this is a real good place to sort of like stretch yourselves. And once we talk about how to make these graphical dialogues, which is really easy to do with the tool we're going to use, right? This is a pretty straightforward shell script. There's not a lot of complex logic in here, which means if you get this done early, right, you can spend a lot of time embellishing it. For example, do you want them to be able to return earlier than they leave? Do you want to let them go back in time? Probably not, but maybe you want to detect that, right, and say you can only, go forward in time, or maybe you're going to allow that, and you'll charge them some extra amount for time travel. You can put a limit on how many bags they'll be checking. Totally up to you. Okay, so my hope is that you'll have some fun with this, and when you can make graphical elements pop up and you can type into boxes or use your mouse to click on things, that's usually a lot of fun to work with, right? Because you can write a shell script, and with like 5 lines of bash code you can have graphical elements that the user can interact with. It's usually pretty satisfying, right? It feels like a good reward for the work. So I'm hoping you'll explore this and be creative and learn some stuff and have fun with it. So group details, as I said, 1 to 4 people. Hopefully we're going to present to the class. So this is due 2 weeks from today. The following Monday is the last week of classes. That's week 11. So hopefully we'll have time to have groups come up and bring up their laptop and show us your PA5. And what I'm going to ask you to do is basically show us the core functionality of it, right? Take us through making a reservation. Take us through making a reservation for somebody who's already made a reservation, and show us the reservation file and that it's getting updated with the new information. And then you can talk us through your code, right? In particular, anything that you did that was sort of particular to your group, anything you found particularly challenging or interesting, or any major embellishments you made, and so on. So it's typically, like a 3 to 5 minute presentation, a little more, a little less. And then again, GitLab repo name PA5, make sure I'm a reporter, make sure that every person's name is listed in the beginning of the main program.
So everything for this is written in Bash?
Everything's in Bash, yeah. You like Bash? You might like it after this. Like I say, this makes it kind of fun to work in Bash.
You don't have to do the double
The double brackets.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little weird. Yeah, I can see that. All right, so I'm gonna play with this from my Linux terminal session. If you install Linux, this should work. If you install Zenity on Cygwin, this should work. And like I say, if you don't do something special like running an X server, you can't do this on the Linux machine, the server we've been doing our work on, because it can't display things like Windows. So the basic command we're using is called Zenity. And if you just say Zenity, it'll say try Zenity -- help for details. And if you do Zenity -- help, you get a whole bunch of options. You can say help all, help general, help calendar, etc., etc., etc. And if you do Zenity -- help - all, right, you get all of this stuff. There's also a manual page for this that I've posted on Canvas. And it's a little less dense, a little easier to get through in some cases. So the types of dialogues we can display, and then some things we can do in general to modify those dialogues. But we're going to play with this right now, and it's one of these things that makes more sense when you actually see it than if you just talk about it. So let's look at our first Zenity dialog, Zenity -- info. And it pops up a little message box, and it says all updates are complete. And it's got the I for information, and I can click on the OK button. But I probably don't want to say all updates are complete. I want to say something else. So I could say Zenity -- info dash dash text equals quote, your reservation has been recorded. Well, now I got a dialog box that says your reservation has been recorded. So it's a way to display information, but do it with some graphical element, and it sits up there until the person clicks OK. So it's like a fancy version of Echo. I can do a warning box by saying dash dash warning, and I get the little warning triangle. And I can do an error box with dash dash error. And those are really our only three options. We can't change that little symbol to whatever we want. But those are our three basic go-tos. I can say Zenity dash dash calendar, and that pops up a calendar dialog. And so, right, a standard dialog, it looks a little different depending on your operating system, but I can click through different months and years and so on and so forth, and you can pick a date and say OK. And notice I picked a date, February 18th, 2013, and when I said OK, Zenity printed that out. But Zenity is also printing out this other stuff, these error messages. And those are kind of a pain. So we talked about this output redirection. We can say command greater than file, and that takes something called standard out. And everything that gets written to standard out goes into this file instead. Remember that? And then we also had command greater than ampersand file, and that sends everything that's written to standard out and everything that's written to standard error into this file. Well, what we really want to do is take the stuff going to standard error, like GTK message, blah, 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 and we want to throw that away. But we still want to see this 2/18/2013, which was written to standard out. So we need a different version of this, which is the following: command to greater than file, and that just redirects standard error. And at the bottom of PA5, I tell you about this under this error handling. Right, so you can say to greater than /dev/null. So dev null is the bit bucket. It's a file that you can write things into and it never fills up. So I'm going to do the same command, but I'm going to say to greater than /dev/null. And so I don't get the error message. I get my dialog box, and when I say OK, Zenity outputs the date that I had highlighted. So now when do I want to leave? Well, let's leave on the first day of finals. That's a good time to get out of town. So I can select that date, and it shows me the date, December 9th. Okay, with me so far? And be thinking about how these apply to PA5 maybe. So this is great if I just want to print out the date that the person selects, but probably that's not what I want to do. Probably I want to save that date in a variable in my bash script so that I can, put it into the res.txt file or compare it to another date or things like that. So do you remember how to capture the output of a command and throw it into a file?
Is it just the single triangle bracket and then the output file?
The single what?
The side caret.
Yeah, the back quote.
Is that the name for the character after the tube?
Oh no, the greater than sign.
Okay, greater than.
Okay, yeah. So So we've got the following options. We can use a greater than sign, and that sends standard out into a file. We have a less than sign, which sends a file into standard in. We've got a command piped into a command 2, which says C1's standard out goes to C2's standard in. We have one other version of this. We only talked about it like once.
Are you talking about the append with the two?
Oh, with the two graders. Okay, so that's appending standard out to a file. Right, so we had that also. And there's still one more. So we could put commands inside back quotes. And that basically said execute the command, capture what gets sent to standard out, and use that as the value over here. So a typical use of that would be something like, A equals back quote PWD. And it didn't produce any output on the screen, but it set the value that PWD printed should be the value of this variable A. So if I echo $A, that shows me the directory. Or if I say A equals back quote date, A is equal to the date string. So if I say something like leave equals back quote big long Zenity string, this will run the Zenity command. It'll ask for a calendar dialog. It will let me make a selection. And then when I'm done, instead of displaying that date on standard out, that date basically becomes the value of this variable leave. And now if I echo $leave, it's got the date that was selected. So I can do this inside a shell script. So I'm just going to execute that same Zenity command and send the output to this variable leave, and I'll just use an echo statement to say you selected the date, and I'll show you what the date is that you selected. So there's my dialog, and if I say OK, it says you selected November 15th. So now we're off and running. We can do all kinds of stuff with this. Okay, so notice when I run this, the top of it says calendar selection, and the line below it says select a date from below, calendar colon. That's kind of a generic set of messaging. So I can change this a number of ways. I can say dash dash text equals quote enter your departure date. And now when I run it, that little text on the top of the window says enter your departure date. And the title bar still says calendar selection. But I can say dash dash title equals, I don't know, step 1. So now it says step 1, enter your departure date. So you can customize these things a little bit.
Can you customize the calendar itself?
Not too much, but a little bit. So if I do Zenity dash dash help dash general, you see these things like title equals, window icon equals. You can put in a icon for the window. We can add a timeout. We can set the height and width of the window to begin with. We can change the text on the OK button, and so on and so forth. Right, so, yeah.
So how do you install Zenity?
So, are you on a Linux system?
I'm on Cygwin.
You're on Cygwin. Okay. Let's do that now, and then we'll come back to this because I forgot to do it the previous section. So I want to make sure I do it here. So on Canvas, 2 entries after PA5, there's a thing that says Zenity install instructions for Cygwin. So I put a copy of the executable on here. So this is a Windows exe file, so you want to download that and just go through the regular installation. You may have to do it as an administrator, but you can try it as a non-administrator first. Follow the regular instructions, and then the tricky part is whatever directory you install it in, put it somewhere, you know, by itself. Whatever directory you install it in, copy that to Cygwin 64/bin. Right, so that you get a directory underneath that called Zenity, and it's just, you know, just drag it over from where you installed it. And then you got to add 2 lines to the end of your bash rc file. So add an alias, and then say export Zenity_datadir, and this is the most important one. If you do all that, then if you're in your bash shell and you say Zenity, it should pop up. Okay, definitely let me know if it works or not, because I haven't tried this on really recent versions of Windows 10. All right, so you can get general help, things that you can use for most of these dialogues, and you can also get specific help for the particular type of dialogue you're working on. So, for example, Zenity --help calendar will give us options just for the calendar dialogue. And so a bit of formatting that we can do, we can specify what day, month, and year we want it to start with. The default is today's date. And we can tweak the date format that it outputs. But that's pretty much it. We can't change, you know, the color or the rounding of the corners or things like that.
So for PA5, are they going to be interacting with the terminal itself, or just strictly GUI?
Really just the GUI.
Okay.
So they're going to say, you know, awesome program, enter to start running the script, and then it should all just be done through graphical.
So are they going to like have the calendar pop up and then close and then something else pops
Yeah,
up?
yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's add a timeout. Let's add a 5-second timeout. So if I don't do anything for 5 seconds, this box will go away, and it'll show me the date that, you know, happened to be selected at the time when it exited. But you can do the high pressure reservation system where you've got like 3 seconds to make each choice if you want. But here's the question. How do I know if the person said let's go, or the person said cancel, or the person just simply timed out? Right? We want to know what caused that dialogue to exit. And the way we do that is our favorite $? variable. Because Zenity returns a value. And it could be a 0 or a 1 or a 5 or maybe something else. And the value that Zenity returns tells you why Zenity exited. So if it's a normal return, if the person says OK, Zenity should return a 0. So let's play with that. So we're going to run our Zenity command. And let's just print out the message entity return the value, and let's see what $question mark is equal to. So if I say OK, it says entity return the value 0. If I say cancel, it says entity return the value 1. If I hit the X out button up here, does entity return the value 1. And if I time out, if I put a timeout on my dialog, which I probably wouldn't, then it'll return a 5. So you want to look at $question mark after Zenity if you care about how the dialog exited. And remember, $question mark shows you the return value from the previous instruction. So if I do this, right, and I cancel out, it's going to mistakenly tell me Zenity returned 0. Because $question mark here is the return value from the previous instruction, which was echo. So if you want to know what Zenity returned, you got to check $question mark right after Zenity. Does that make sense? Okay, do you know about backslashes and bash? I don't think we've talked about these yet. Alright, so if you type a backslash as the last character on a line, you can hit enter and continue your command onto the next line. So I just typed the command date, but I did it on 4 lines here. So that's kind of goofy, but it's useful if you have a really long line like our Zenity command here and we want to make it more readable. So I could do something like this. Alright, so that's a little easier to read what's going on. And if I want to add more options, right, it's easy to do that, to just continue that pattern. So that's one bash command. It's just broken up onto multiple lines, but it runs exactly the same. Alright, is this making some sense? So this is something good to play with, right? I'll show you some more dialogues, but it's really a lot more fun to just mess around with it and get a feeling for what these things do. And the more you mess around with it, the more you'll be thinking about how you could integrate this into PA5. Zenity does a lot more than you need for PA5, right? But you know, obviously you're supposed to pick a date when the person wants to leave and return. Calendar dialog is probably a useful thing to use for that instance. Number of bags, that can be just something they type in, or it could be something that you select from a list, or you could have a slider. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do this, and again, it's really up to you. So let me show you a few more useful dialogues. So Zenity -- entry pops up a box that you can type into. So I can say hello there, and the return value from Zenity is whatever you typed in to the box. And again, if you hit cancel, right, you can detect that by looking at the value of $question mark and seeing if it's 0 or not. If it's non-zero, something went wrong. And this says enter new text and add a new entry, but we can do -- text on any of these to specify the text that's displayed. And so now it says, what is your name? So we can do text input like that. We can do dash dash text info, and that displays a bigger text area, but not a very interesting one. But we can say dash dash file name equals, and we can put in the name of a file. So I'll do my bash rc in my home directory. No, I won't. There we go. And so it's showing me a text box that contains, in this case, my bash rc, but whatever file you have. So if you want to print out a big long dialogue with terms of use or something like that, you can throw it in a file and then use this text info dialogue. And you can scroll through this, right? I can scroll wheel or I can drag the scroll bar. And these are regular windows, so I can maximize them. I can't make the text bigger, but there's other ways to do that. And you can move them around and resize and all the usual stuff. But I cannot edit this. Right, it's a read-only window right now. If I want it to be editable, I can add a switch, editable, and now I can type more stuff in here and delete some stuff and so on and so forth. So you could make a version of Notepad with like one call to Zenity. Open up a file and display it, and you can move around with your arrow keys, and you can select text. And
does it save it?
So if I say OK, it's not going to edit the file. Okay, the file is just being read from, and I'm editing locally, but once I say OK, Zenity will output the new contents of the file. So if I were to take this and throw it into another file, like with a greater than sign, let's throw it into a new file. I'll say, ha ha ha, I'm editing this, and I'll type some random stuff. And now if I say OK, then this new file is the file that I just edited.
Can you do drop-down menus?
Yes, you can. Well, you can do drop-down lists.
Okay.
It's not quite a menu, but you could fake it. Our entry dialog, we can specify entry text, which will be something initially displayed in that spot that we're going to type. So, like a default selection or something like that, or something helpful like type here, right? And it's selected, so it replaces if I just start typing. And we can also do okay, I'll cheat and look at my notes. Hide text. You can do hide text, and then as you type it, shows you a dot instead of showing what you type, so for like a password field. Alright, so yeah, let's look at a drop-down list. So dash dash list, this is a confusing one. I'm going to put this one in a file so that I get multiple chances. So dash dash list. So first thing you specify is the title for each column. So what kind of list should we make?
A list of names.
List of names, okay. Column equals name. column equals, I don't know, we'll do your grade. And column equals, I don't know, height. It's a weird school where we grade based on height, I guess. And then you basically fill in this case, triples of things that you want to display in each column. So we'll have person A, and they'll get an A, and they'll be, I don't know, 60 inches. And person B gets a B, and they're 70 inches. And we'll put Izad in here. And what grade do we give Izad? We'll give him an A+, because it's Izad. And I have no idea how tall he is, so we'll make him 100 inches tall, because he's a giant. Travis would, no, we can't give Travis an F. Do an F+.
6'2", I don't know what that is.
6'2", so 74 inches, I think. And I'll do an F- for myself, and I'll be 70. All right. And this is all one command, so I need to have this backslash at the end of each. Now you can do this on just one line, but it's going to be cleaner if you organize it in some way. So Zenity -- list, and then -- column name, column equals, and list all the columns, and then just list the actual data. And so piecing this command together is going to take some work, right? But you can do this in your bash script. You're just making a big long string. So if I run that, there's my drop-down list, and there's the name and the grade and the height, and you can scroll through and select one. And then the output from Zenity is the value of the first column by default. Okay, but you can specify that instead you want the value from the second column or the third column, right? So you can change that by specifying print column equals. You can also have hidden columns, so you can just put an index in a column and hide it from the display, but make that your print column so you can get the result out. You can also do radio list. And so now it looks the same, except you've got a little button you can pick in the beginning. And you can also do a checklist. And now you can select with a checkbox, and you can pick multiple entries if you want. And then the output will be the second column in this case, because the first one's being used for the checkbox, and it's a pipe separated list of all the things that were selected. So pretty versatile, right? Now this is not as powerful as if you were to do this in Java, which we'll do in spring, but that will require us to learn Java and object-oriented programming, and then window builder and swing, so there's a lot of heavy lifting there. If we wanted to do this in C with something like GTK, it takes a lot more low-level stuff. In Python, it's pretty easy to do graphical displays. So in Bash, it's kind of like in the middle. I mean, it's pretty instant satisfaction, right? There's a lot of capability from one line of Bash code, basically. And we give up some versatility, but it's enough to get us going. So play around with this. Check the manual pages. If you have Cygwin, follow those instructions and let me know if it works or not. And if it doesn't work, let's get together and figure out how to install it. If you have Linux, this should come with Linux by itself. But again, if you don't have it, let me know and I'll tell you how to hopefully install it. But mess around with it, get some ideas, figure out who you want to work with, and start doing some high-level brainstorming.
Do a sudo apt install for Zenity.
Do you have to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on a Pi, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, so I will see you next time.